SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Planning a visit to Iuka or the Corinth area? The perfect stay awaits you at Lake Park Inn and Heritage Place Hotels of Iuka. They have been awarded Booking.com's highest customer satisfaction rating in the region for cleanliness and comfort. Forget the rest and stay with the best. Book at heritagehoteliuka.com.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Whew, good thing it is, man. It's been a long week. It's been a busy and exhausting and a fun week altogether, so to speak. But we're here, all buckled up, ready to go. What beautiful weather we have out there today. It was pretty cold to start the week, but we're ending more in the temperature range, if not a little bit a range that is above the range for this time of year. And you saw the western part of the United States is really hot out there. That's like middle of the summer type weather. Man, crazy stuff. But I prefer that personally over the cold. That's just me. I like the warmth.
Yeah, according to the weatherman, we are about, depending on where you are in the state, anywhere from 8 to 15 degrees warmer than usual today.
Today, because
for the first day of spring.
That's right. It is 80s today, right?
Some parts, yeah.
Man, incredible. Well, the situation in the Middle East, it continues. That's one way to put it. The president is now mulling a takeover of Karg Island. I'm looking at an aerial view. It's just nothing but oil for the most part, right? That's like the Iran's most precious asset, considering the fact that oil is their most precious asset, and the island of Karg is where a whole bunch, if not most of it, is. And so the president now is considering an operation that would take over the island. It's about 15 miles offshore. It does, in fact, process about 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. And doing so, there is a concern, would require more troops. So 3 different Marine units are presently en route to the region. The White House, the Pentagon, considering sending even more troops. That the word in the news media as per a Pentagon official. So the president says he wants to get Hormuz open. Today, I heard a report this morning, 0 traffic going through the strait. And so oil increasing. It had once again topped $115 a barrel or so overnight in futures trading. It's up to about $98 and change. Still a decent spread. Here's the thing about the stock markets. When the price of oil is going up, the price of stocks are going down. They kind of work in opposite of each other. And that's what we're looking at today. And the reason I'm talking about this is because Saudi Arabia, starting off with this, Saudi Arabia last night, take it for what it's worth, they say they see a spike to oil of potentially $180 a barrel if the present level of supply as affected by the excursion continues through April. So another 4 to 5 weeks, if the conflict continues, Saudi Arabia says expect oil to travel all the way up to $180 a barrel. That would be double the price of gas and diesel at its current level. Double. So prices at this level could also trigger a recession, the dreaded R word. My concern is that this is going to spike inflation, and spiking inflation is sticky. It's hard to shake inflation. And, of course, we all know that the price of oil is incorporated in every good and service we consume. And so you could see prices spike across the board, and they're just harder to come down. They seem to rise faster. And honestly, until you get oil back into that more comfortable range in the 60s, don't expect that to happen. So it's not a good thing when you got the kingdom saying that it could go up to $180 a barrel. The all-time high was reached in July 2008, believe it or not, $146 a barrel. And one analyst in the energy consulting firm Wood Mackenzie said, quote, $200 a barrel is not outside the realm of possibility in 2026. So that's what's going on, and that's important because every single person that's tuned in is affected by this. I pray, I hope, I remain optimistic that this is not the case. I get it. The kingdom is putting this out there and just trying to get ahead of it, let folks know. What I hope is that there is a swift and successful conclusion to this excursion, and that Iran has its nuclear ambitions and capability completely eliminated, that the flow of oil returns to its normal state and volume, and of course that not a single American drop of blood is spilled over this situation. That's my hope and prayer, and I hope you'll join in with me in that hope and prayer as well. But that's what's going on. The president just did a little press release, not a press release, a presser, I should say, where it looks like he was recognized and doing a little ceremony for the U.S. Navy football team. That's pretty cool. That was live. He also called NATO members cowards. I'm with you, Mr. President, over refusal to help open the Strait of Hormuz. He called them cowards. They are. And he reminded them, you wouldn't even be here. We talked about it yesterday. You wouldn't even exist were it not for our protections and the money the American taxpayers invest in the United States military. You wouldn't even be here. He said, so easy for them to do with so little risk if you'll just join our efforts to get this strait reopened. In all caps, cowards, and we will remember. Spot on, Mr. President. I'm with you on that. It is ridiculous. What's up with those Europeans, Rhino? What's happened? Once proud nations, proud people. What the hell happened to them?
The short answer, they have allowed an influx of, depending on the country, anywhere between 5 and 9% of Islamic migrants from the Middle East, and they fear that if they get involved, they're going to see an uptick in terroristic activity within their own borders.
Oh, because
from the people they let in.
The idiots, as that crazy James Tallarico, who's the Democratic candidate for Senate in Texas, he says our border should be like our front porch. That's what they did in Europe. Now they're paying the price for it. What good has come out of that? You can't even recognize jolly old London, England anymore. It's sick. And so it's not right that this country essentially guards the world and keeps it from blowing up. And they benefit from that and don't pay their fair share. Borrowing the Democrats' favorite refrain. They truly don't, though, unlike the Democrats who just lie their butts off about who pays taxes in this country. Unbelievable. Mike in Simpson County says, what happened to drill, baby, drill? I'm going to share with you the numbers. We have relaxed regulations that are promoting oil and gas exploration since the president took over. He largely reversed all of those policies implemented under Biden. We produce about 13.7 million barrels a day. That is up about 400 to 500 million barrels a day. 1,000 barrels a day, 400 to 500,000, relative to what it was when Biden left office. It was on the upswing when Biden was in office, believe it or not, despite all the crazy onerous regulations. We're doing that, but we consume over 19 million. There's always been a gap. We can't make up for the loss in that period of time, that shorter period of time, for the loss of the oil on the market that comes out of the Middle East and through the Strait of Hormuz. It's about 25 million barrels a day, more than we consume. We just can't do it that fast. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
Mississippi.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk Mississippi.
In the eyes of a ranger, the unsuspecting stranger had better know the truth of wrong from right. 'Cause the eyes of the ranger are upon you. Any wrong you do, he's gonna see. When you're in Texas, look behind you. 'Cause that's where the ranger's gonna be.
That's exactly right. The Rangers. There you go. So on the C Spire text line, Nathan in Smith County, by the way, 601-879-4395 if you'd like to join the conversation today with us. Nathan says, I've heard the comparison to the falling of the Berlin Wall. If this is successful, do you see this as that large of a war? And I'm willing to bite the bullet right now if this lasts 6 months. But if this lasts 6 months, it could be bad. Yeah, so a couple things. Appreciate that message there, Nathan. Yeah, I think, Rhino, I would equate this to the falling of the Berlin Wall, and that there's just constant tension, constant concern, constant vigilance. What are these nuts going to do next? And I think the threat of them acquiring a nuclear weapon is arguably even more serious, because that can blow the world up, and they want to the point where only they remain, and then they install their system, their cult. That's their goal. You infidels, you got to go, right? So, yeah, I do think it's that big. If this lasts 6 months, I get it. Bite the bullet. I'm just simply sharing what is possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Nobody knows. That's just the point. Nobody knows, and it feels like every time it appears that their military capability has been fully neutralized and eliminated, more missiles are launched. You got to believe they're running out. They say, by the way, not that you can trust them whatsoever. Oh, yeah, we still have the ability to produce missiles, these armaments.
Well, I mean, their propaganda is saying they still have the best. They're saving the best for last.
That is true.
Because that's how it works.
But we can't ignore that there's a political component of this. You can't ignore that, especially with the midterms 8 months away. You can't
Trump
ignore
even
that.
said that when he was asked about it on Air Force One.
He sure did. You can't. So,
and he basically said you can't worry about the politics. You got to do what's right.
I agree with him on that. And so I'm simply pointing out that we could be looking at some significant inflation that could persist. We even could be tipped into a recession. Economists are, in fact, starting to talk about that. I don't see it personally. That's just, for what that's worth, my personal opinion, just in looking at business activity, consumer activity. Now, could I change my mind? Sure. Something could happen. But right now, today, I don't see it. Also, Jerome Powell, he's the Fed chairman, as you know. On Wednesday, the Fed announced rates remain level, no adjustment. He hinted at maybe one rate cut for the rest of the year, although, Rhino, there is one governor, I can't remember her name, on the board, the Open Market Committee there, as it is called, that makes those decisions. She's still, on her dot plot chart, still calling for 3. She still believes that's the case. And the president is still lambasting Jerome Powell, who, by the way, says, yeah, I think I may just stay around here for a while. You've seen that. That's in the news now, which just further does it not illustrate his defiance, his dislike, his detestation for the president, and that he is a political animal and not the objective, unbiased Fed chairman that he should be? Because we got a pretty good guy that the president has appointed in Kevin Warsh that's waiting to get approved and take that position. But right now it looks like Jerome Powell says he's staying put. Even maybe working with the DOJ on this. I think I saw something about that, which is crazy. So, that rattled the markets, and also the 10-year Treasury's up today. That affects your mortgage rates, auto loans, credit card rates, etc. It's up to almost 4.4%. So expect mortgage rates to start trending upward, and don't be surprised if you don't see maybe a slight increase in your credit card, if you have that, credit card rates, and then if you're thinking about buying anything else of significant value that you're going to finance, likely to see higher financing costs as a result. So these things will factor in to the political environment, and Democrats will highlight it big time. Speaking of Democrats, they got to quit lying about what the SAVE Act does. I know that's really asking for a tall order there. Quit lying about this. But I even saw, can't remember her name, a U.S. senator that said, oh, yeah, in order for me to vote, I would actually have to bring all these various documents proving that I'm a citizen. No, that's not what it does, Senator Rosen. She says, I'll have to have my birth certificate, marriage certificate, and passport to vote. No, to register to vote. To prove you're who you are, that you are a United States citizen. You're good to go after that. Go vote your butt off after that. But you know how they're playing games with this. The implication of her statement is, oh, you got to carry these documents, have these documents on your person, in your possession, and present those documents for the poll workers to hand you a ballot. That's wrong. That's not what it does. Quit it. She said, this is a citizenship test. Yeah, it is. You shouldn't be confused about that, Senator. That's disgusting. It's so disingenuous to promote that, but they do it, and this is what I don't get. You've seen poll after poll, both from more liberal-leaning organizations as well as right-leaning, and those in the middle. They all come up with the same result. 75, 80% of the people in the country support this, some sort of voter ID. Why are they opposed to an issue that's supported by 80% of the people? Just incredible. Yeah, Senator Jackie Rosen from Nevada. She's the one that said it. Oh, I've got to bring my birth certificate, my marriage certificate, or my passport to vote, not to register. She doesn't make that distinction, but you only got to do one time. After that, you vote multiple times. If you move and you need to re-register, sorry, Senator, you're going to have to do that again. How big a problem is that? To ensure that we've got only United States citizens voting in our elections.
I mean, one would think you would want to make sure your valuable, important documents travel with you when you move.
That's a good point.
So you're probably going to put your hands on them long before you ever have to go register to vote at your new address.
It's just unbelievable. It truly is. And it's so disheartening to see a U.S. Senator just lie. Now, she would say, well, technically what I said is true because you do have to show that. You know that's not her point here. She's trying to scare people. They derive much benefit, unfortunately, in political expediency by lying or twisting the truth, perverting it, distorting it in such a way that does generate benefit for them personally, because that's all they care about. Selfish dang politician. Truly despicable in my view, and you don't even deserve to be sitting in the United States Senate when you tell those sorts of untruths. It's the way I put it. Man, oh man. Jeez. So the president and Netanyahu are split on this gas field attack that Israel launched on Iran. The president was not happy about that. And he scolded the prime minister a bit on that. This was on energy infrastructure, and the president knows that was unnecessary. He says, quote, I told him, don't do that. We get along great. It's coordinated, but on occasion he'll do something. And if I don't like it, and so we're not doing that anymore. That's what he said. Netanyahu did confirm Israel acted alone. Rhino, they shouldn't do that, man. Why wouldn't you just call the president and say, hey, I think we ought to do this. What do you think? And if the president said yes, okay, you're good to go. And if he said no, okay, Mr. President, we're deferring to you. That doesn't make any sense to me. Man, oh, man. Well, we're going to come right back in the Element Well studio. It's Francis Rooney, U.S. Representative for Florida's 19th Congressional District from 17 to 21, and a U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See from 2005 until 2008. We're going to talk foreign policy. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.com. You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. It's our great pleasure to welcome now Francis Rooney, U.S. Representative for Florida's 19th Congressional District for the years 2017 to 2021. Served as U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See from 2005 and 2008. Congressman Rooney, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
You bet. So you were brought on because you are an expert, we're told, on a wide range of foreign policy. And, of course, that's kind of what's dominating the news cycle right now with this excursion, as the president calls it, over in the Middle East. And he lashed out pretty hard, Congressman, to the European nations, our allies, for not coming to our aid in a coordinated effort to secure the strait to get the oil flowing again. What are your thoughts about all this?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that he didn't have some of his people spend a little time with the European allies before he went in. I mean, they get a little prickly about that. Sooner or later, they're going to have to help out with the Straits of Hormuz because they're going to need the oil too.
Well, why do you think they're holding back? Why are they pushing back on this and not willing to work with the U.S. and Israel to get that thing back open?
I think there's a bit of baggage from their point of view with the president, not deserved particularly, but he's been pretty aggressive about NATO. I think he's been right about it, that they need to pay their share. Great. They didn't like hearing that. And I think the fact that he didn't talk to them before he went in probably affects their politics over there.
Okay. So it sounds to me like maybe they got their feelings hurt a little bit because they didn't get talked to. But I get it. That's the way these leaders kind of posture and banter back and forth. It seems like, though, the goal right now is to get to a level of peace and restore normal operations in the region, particularly from an oil perspective. And we need all hands on deck to get that done.
I agree with that. We certainly do.
Well, let's talk about Ukraine-Russia situation. That's like falling out of the news now that we've got this action in the Middle East. What can you tell us, and what are your thoughts about what's going on there and where we're headed?
Well, I think the position that the United States has put out, that we're willing to give Russia the property that they've taken but not give them any more as part of a ceasefire and a settlement, is the right one. I mean, we don't have any business giving Putin something he hasn't even already won yet. Yeah.
And it seems like the president's been fairly firm on that, but I also know that he wants to just get a deal done, right? He wants to bring that thing to a close, stop the bloodshed and the massive expense and just the burden on not only the region, those peoples, but the whole world.
I think everybody would like to see that. This thing's going on longer than World War II.
Yeah, that's crazy. So tell us about the U.S. Holy See relationship. What exactly does that mean there where you served?
The reason we have a mission to the Holy See seems a little odd to people sometimes to have a diplomatic mission to a church, but is that the role that they can play in the world of diplomacy by their influence is perceived, and I think it is, a valuable asset for our U.S. diplomacy. I know when I was there, we worked with the Holy See, the Pope, and his top people to call out some bad people around the world that they were less. They could not be impeached. It wasn't like someone could say you just want their oil or anything. They speak from a very philosophical position. So when we call out Iran or when we call out Kabila in the Congo or some of these kind of heinous leaders, they've got a moral authority.
Okay. That makes sense. So the United States, how long has an ambassador served in that position? When was that position created? Do you know?
It was created under Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
He before then, there were many efforts to create an ambassador level position at the Holy See, but they couldn't quite get the political will to do it. World War II, Roosevelt sent over a leading American industrialist. He'd been chairman of U.S. Steel, and he was his personal representative. He did a lot of important things during the war. I mean, the Vatican or the Holy See was very helpful in getting cables and diplomatic messages out that we couldn't get out. So they've been a real player for us when we've needed them.
Okay. The president, as you know, is a strong believer in the tool of tariffs and implemented a wide range of tariffs. Of course, the Supreme Court has struck some of those down. I don't know that fight is necessarily over yet, where that's going with respect to the possibility of the U.S. Treasury having to issue refunds out to those organizations that paid tariffs. It's quite convoluted. What are your overall thoughts and impressions of that policy, that strategy, and where we are today?
Historically, tariffs have been very difficult to make work. The Economist published an article recently that the tariffs that have been put in place are being shared about 1/3 each: the supply chain, the consumer, and the manufacturer. And so there's a little bit of inflation lurking through all areas of the economy as a result of them. I don't know whether it'll get out of hand or not. It hasn't gotten out of hand yet. And the other issue with tariffs is, what are you trying to accomplish if we don't have the people to repatriate those businesses in the first place? There are some businesses that can be repatriated. I think certainly the ones dealing with these microchips and things like that are critical. And if we can get some of those here as a result of the tariffs, that'd be great.
Yeah. And it's really kind of hard to pin down whether or not any sort of repatriation is a direct result of tariffs, or if there are other business reasons and factors involved in those decisions as well. Would you agree?
That's a very good point, especially in the area of microchips because of the specter of Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing over there.
Yeah, and of course the constant threat of China wanting to invade and take over the country as well is a problem, and that threatens the supply chain of those critical chips that are honestly used in every aspect of our economy and our life these days. And I agree that it makes sense for those to be made stateside to just eliminate that threat.
Yeah, I think Taiwan Semiconductor is actually going to put in some capability in the United States as well as that Foxconn and some others. So that's a good development for us.
You're right. They absolutely have announced that. Your thoughts on the president's move, his action in Venezuela earlier this year where he removed Maduro, who just seemed to be a tyrant. Was that the right thing to do, and how's that looking for us these days?
I think that was quite a victory. It was flawless the way it was carried out, the way that the agency infiltrated what they call the Squadra Azul, the blue squad of Castro's goons that they sent over to protect Maduro. And the fact that they could accomplish that with hardly any loss of life was a spectacular result for our military. Maduro is no good guy, that's for sure. I don't know that the people that are still there are any good either. Certainly, Diosdado Cabello, who's really been running the country behind the scenes, is a dangerous individual for us. Yeah. But right now, things seems to be in equilibrium, and I also think it sets the stage to go get Cuba.
That was where I was going. As a matter of fact, a lot of news coming out of Cuba. It looks like something's about to turn down there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, they've got to be pretty strung out. I mean, the place has been a mess for a long time. I was down there 20 years ago, and it was a mess. And now they don't have any oil or any light or any electricity. They don't have any food. They're getting wrung out, just like wringing out a wet shirt. And sooner or later, they're going to fall.
Anything in particular, any action on the part of the president that you think has been good policy that may cause them to fall, the regime to be ousted, and to perhaps even return that country to democracy?
Well, cutting off Russia's ability to supply oil to them and cutting off Venezuela's ability to supply oil to them and to supply arms and other things that Venezuela was supplying them is a huge step because they're totally dependent on Russia and Venezuela.
Yeah.
And I think this is time now to exercise some restraint and let the events that are in place work for a while.
Yeah. It also seems like, does it not, Congressman Rooney, that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has kind of an elevated interest in the situation in Cuba, given his personal familial connection to the country?
Oh, yeah. The happiest place in the world will be Miami if we take over, if Cuba falls.
Yeah.
You know, we've always known that we could get Cuba. It's just a matter of, is it worth the lives that would be lost to get it? Now I think that our government's figured out a way to get it without loss of life. They're just going to decay from the inside.
You know, Congressman, just talking about Cuba, the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia, these various hot spots, Venezuela. Man, it just feels and seems like the world would just overall be a lot better off if we could just rid the place of these menaces. We got about a minute left. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we do seem to have a surfeit of bad guys in different countries right now. And we put up with the Venezuela thing for a long time. And it hasn't gotten any better in 20 years. It wasn't any good under Chavez, and it's no better under Maduro. And the Ayatollahs have been 47 years. They haven't really hurt us, but they've hurt Israel, and they've created a lot of uncertainty that hopefully we get by this Hormuz problem. We can restore stability in the Straits.
Amen to that. Former Congressman and Ambassador Francis Rooney represented Florida's 19th district between 2017 and 2021 has been our guest. Congressman, thanks so much for coming on. Really enjoyed the discussion and your insights, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Hello, I'm Sean
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Brad Delp on lead vocals there for Boston. Appreciate that, Rhino, bumming us in to this final segment of Hour 1. We've got Kelly Bennett with SuperTalk Mississippi News joining us at 11:20. Appreciate Congressman, former Congressman, and Ambassador Francis Rooney. I really enjoyed that discussion. He's got, you look at his bio, it's incredible, his involvement in foreign policy while in the United States House of Representatives and, of course, also as an ambassador. That's pretty neat. Enjoyed that discussion. It really is complicated, and I just keep hoping and praying, man, if we can just get world peace. Isn't that what John Lennon famously said, right, Rhino? Just give peace a chance. It's such a waste of human capital, of human life, of economic activity, of money. Now, by the way, you've probably seen the Department of War is asking for $200 billion. $200 billion. We need $200 billion to keep this thing going. $200 deadgum billion. When does it end? This money pit. The answer is it doesn't. Never, ever. And I think Americans are sick of it. We just eclipsed the $39 trillion debt level. $39 trillion. And we're on a run rate in 10 years. Hard to believe. We're going to be approaching over 60 trillion. It wouldn't surprise me that if in 5 years our debt's not at 50 trillion. Wrap your head around that figure. $50 trillion. And I certainly understand the Pentagon requesting this $200 billion because we are investing a lot of our assets in this excursion, as the president calls it. So it's not surprising that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, on behalf of the Pentagon, says we need more money for the Iran war. And I guess the question is, okay, when does it end? I certainly understand this is a war that we are fighting directly. We want to ensure that our military service personnel have everything they need to discharge their duty, to defend themselves and our country, the world, absolutely. But it does cost money, and we've expended quite a bit in prosecuting this war, and that's where we are. Of course, you also know the president has requested an additional $500 billion. $500 billion. That's a 50% increase in the military's budget for the next fiscal year to jack it up from the current $1 trillion level to $1.5 trillion. That, of course, in the face of ballooning deficits and $39 trillion in debt. It's like play money. It just seems to be irrelevant. And I'm not sure if that's the right amount, if it's not needed. I'm not privy to that information. None of us are. So I'm not second-guessing the president in this respect. I'm just pointing out the math. That is the math. And the big-time deficits and the lapping onto our debt are going to continue. Let's just pray that we get this thing over with in a hurry so that we're not facing down what could be a recession. That we don't want that. And how that would come is if inflation stays elevated and that causes consumerism and demand to drop off significantly, that could cause inflation. And that wouldn't be a good thing. And, I really think about those that are approaching retirement, that are looking at their nest egg to do so, and how they're now probably having second thoughts about retiring. Now, I certainly get it. Just like Nathan from Smith County said, I'm willing to bite the bullet right now for what could be greatness on the other side of this. And I'm with you too, Nathan. I believe that as well, and I'm like I said, both hopeful and prayerful to a swift conclusion and to, again, rid the world of these bad people and get things back to normal. But the facts are, and the reality is, from an economic perspective, this could do some damage that would last beyond just a short period of the war, and that's just things we have to be aware of, not only from a political perspective, but for your personal household perspective. I think $6, $7 diesel would be a problem. I worry about our farmers, Rhino, in the state of Mississippi, already struggling. Now's the time when they're buying diesel, right, to get stuff in the ground, running their implements. I don't pretend to understand that sequence of events 100%, but pretty sure that's the case. And so that's an increase in the cost of a key input. Coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News. Stay with us.
Your of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transmission now.
Now on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays, hour 2 of the program from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
On a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today, you'll hear from comedian and actress Jamie French. You can listen to In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on Super Talk Mississippi. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006, of course, to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. So how far along are we, Rhino, with respect to the old liquor warehouse not operating properly, the alcoholic beverage warehouse, the ABC warehouse, I should say?
Last
shut
I
down
saw,
for a
there
while,
was
right?
a lawsuit filed by 3 liquor stores against them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't blame them because it's negatively impacting their business in a big sort of way, right? And it's causing all kinds of heartache and now financial hardship and pain. I think Representative Robert Johnson, I think he said something as well here, if I'm not mistaken, talking about this bill that would allow liquor stores to purchase directly. Isn't that what I think that's what they're upset about, right? This bill may provide, at least attempt to provide some sort of temporary relief, but it's, I've said this on the show a couple of weeks ago after we had Hank Zuber on, Representative Hank Zuber. He's the one, I think, that authored the bill, if I'm not mistaken, that would allow liquor stores to bypass the ABC. I get it. They need product. But I get worried about that model working as a replacement, as a complete dollar-for-dollar distribution replacement to the current model employed by the alcoholic beverage control warehouse in Mississippi. And I'm not sure that is the best approach. Although I certainly understand Representative Zuber, he's just looking for a solution. Hey, look, in the meantime, if we can't get the alcohol out of the warehouse, we're going to bypass law, implement law, sign off on law that would allow you to purchase directly from manufacturers or perhaps other suppliers. So now 3, they're on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, by the way. 3 stores have filed a lawsuit against the company contracted to manage the state's ABC warehouse. They say they breached the contract. I say they probably have a pretty good case here. Now, I haven't been privy to the contract. I don't know what the terms and conditions contained therein are, but my guess is when you're not able to supply the product for an extended period of time and it's a direct result of some negligence on your part? I mean, it'd be different, right, Rhino, if, well, the manufacturer's having a problem with some raw material ingredient and they're unable to produce. That's a little different. This is completely the result of your failure to execute the distribution function. I don't care if it's software that's glitchy and not fully implemented and up and running, or if it's problems with the physical packing systems, distribution systems, conveyors and pick and pack machines and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. You're responsible. And we have a contract with you. So this is interesting. The lawsuit is about accountability. Says Ruin Transport, a $1 billion corporation out of Iowa who was hired to run Mississippi's only liquor warehouse. They rolled out an untested system, and it failed. And every liquor store, bar, restaurant, casino in the state has been paying the price ever since. That the statement from Tim Porter of Porter and Maloof. So the delivery problems, of course, primary culprit is this change in software. So as an old software warhorse, I can just tell you that when you look at the typical project plan and the life cycle of software implementation, starting with the design at a very high conceptual level through detailed design, through the actual development of the system and implementation of the system, the rule of thumb always is, in best practices, when you put that project plan together, 70% or more of it should be dedicated to testing. Makes sense. That's how you avoid this kind of stuff. So I don't know if they adhere to that standard. And by the way, that's been since the 70s. That's not anything new. That goes back to mainframe software development. And it stands to reason. It makes sense. Hey, before you go put that stuff in production and rip out what is currently working, though needing to be enhanced or upgraded, make dadgum sure this stuff works. Sounds like that didn't happen. I don't know that for sure, just looking casually as an observer here with a little knowledge of software implementation. Sounds to me like they need more testing. I don't know if you happen to catch, I think it's, is it Libby's? What's the company? Isn't that a big pharmaceutical company, I believe?
Lilly?
Lilly, pardon me. I said Libby's.
Eli Lilly.
Yeah, Eli Lilly. Libby's, I'm thinking about the food products company. Lilly, right. And they got actually a pretty good commercial where it's got a lot of old footage in it and so forth, and they go through the life cycle of the creation of new drugs. And at the end, it's test. They say this. Everything else they say one time, and at the end they say test about 10 times. Test, test, test again, test. Now, does that always happen? I'm not sure. We certainly could argue that the old COVID drugs, in an effort to get those out there pretty quick, that's a lot of the complaints about that. Not sufficient testing. And I think that's borne out by the fact that originally we were told, oh, yeah, this will actually prevent transmission. Wasn't too long after that. No, it really doesn't. Well, sounds to me like it wasn't properly tested. And that's kind of what's going on. I'm just using that as a comparison, as an analogy, but it's the same deal. You're talking about something that has such a significant, sweeping impact. You don't just throw it out there. And that feels like maybe that's what happened here with respect to this disaster that is alcohol distribution in the state of Mississippi. A lot of calls, as you know, to completely privatize that. I fully support that as well. The challenge is that there's about $57 million of revenue generated, which literally is profit, if you will, from the distribution function of ABC that goes direct to the general fund. And that's because the state essentially is in the distribution business, and they have a statutory 27.5% markup, which yields about $57 million a year in profit. By the way, I'm not making this up. I dug into the 250-page DOR, Department of Revenue report, where their financial statements are laid out there for the ABC. And so we would have to figure out another way to raise that money. Most likely it would be some sort of increase on taxes on alcohol. Because if a private company comes in, they're going to keep that profit. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. Now, we also have the problem of a whole brand new building under construction for the ABC. That's an asset owned by the state. I would say if the state could see fit to exit the distribution business and privatize it, maybe a condition of that move would be they'd have to occupy the building. I think that's reasonable. Surely there's some suitors out there that would have an interest in this. It's a $500 million operation, by the way. So that's the move I think the state ought to make, because you still got a crippled system that's not fully operational, and you got an asset that's under construction. And I don't want the taxpayers to be sitting with a building that's empty and all the money that's being spent to equip and construct that building. Surely we can work that out. So if you're listening out there, legislators, consider that. Start working on that now. It's not right that these small businesses, these package stores, restaurants, lounges, etc., are struggling because of this abject failure by a third party. So I don't feel like, Rhino, that the courts are going to be too friendly to this company. And especially if in doing their investigation, they're going to bring in some expert witnesses, of course, when you're dealing with software. And they're going to go through that entire life cycle associated with this particular project. And they're going to want to see all the project documents, and they are enormous, as you can imagine, to see how the heck did we get here where this software you tried to put online, move into production, just doesn't function. We're stepping aside for a break right now. Once again, in the Element Wealth studio on the other side, it's Kelly Bennett, Multimedia Journalist of SuperTalk Mississippi News.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Kelly Bennett, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Happy first day of spring.
All right, absolutely. What's going on there, Kelly? Everything good?
Well, we've been covering a lot. We're coming down to the nitty-gritty as far as the 2026 legislative session is concerned. A couple of big stories this week. I know cancer advocates are really celebrating now that Governor Tate Reeves has signed a bill into law that requires insurance companies to cover biomarker testing. This is a technology that helps cancer patients get the correct treatment. Every cancer seems to be very individualistic, and so this really helps doctors figure out what each patient needs in regard to their treatment. It passed unanimously in both chambers. It was co-sponsored by Republican Representative Kevin Felsher.
Biomarker testing provides the right treatment at the right time. It eliminates this trial and error where patients are just given medications and let's just wait and see if that works.
So Mississippi now the 23rd state to require insurance companies to cover biomarker testing. That law will go into effect on July 1st. And I believe this biomarker testing can also help Alzheimer's patients. So it's not just cancer, but the cancer advocates have been the ones that have been really pushing this one through. While we're on the topic of cancer, health officials in Mississippi warning that young people may be at a higher risk of cancer than ever before. Data from the State Department of Health shows colorectal cancer is increasing 7 times faster among people younger than 50. The state ranks 3rd in the nation in cancer deaths. That's a scary statistic. That's a number that Kimberly Hughes with the American Cancer Society is hoping will go down with this biomarker testing bill. And health officials, of course, I'm sure Dr. Dan Edney, if he were here with us right now, he would say prevention and early detection are the most effective ways to find it and get it cured. Early detection is key.
No doubt about it. We have such marvelous technology for that purpose, not only detection technology, but treatment technology as well. But your treatment prospects are way better if you get early detection, if you use that technology to do so. So I think this is good news, getting this passed. I really do. This was a no-brainer in my view. And again, this is just a function of fantastic human innovation, creating new technology, biomarker technology, as a way for more targeted treatment for cancer. So the governor's been bragging a bit, along with the state treasurer, about the state's credit rating improving, and we got an upgrade, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I really haven't seen this a lot in some of the more major publications this week, and I guess I was more excited about it. I mean, think about what your personal credit rating does for you. That's the kind of thing the state of Mississippi is counting on. They generated a record-breaking $1 billion in interest rate income in 2025. And according to a Monday announcement from Governor Tate Reeves and State Treasurer David McRae, these historic returns, combined with other pro-growth policies, have helped restore confidence among credit rating agencies. The S&P Global Credit Ratings improved the state's outlook from negative to stable. Now, what can this do for the state? It can translate into lower borrowing costs, help stretch taxpayer dollars further, and allow Mississippi to continue to invest in the priorities that strengthen the state's economy. According to Reeves, state leaders have finalized a record-breaking $70 billion in new capital investments since he took office. And this improved credit rating shows their hard work is paying off. And I know, on your show and on the Richard Cross Morning Show, we've had a lot of state legislators on it. It's budget crunch time right now. That's what they're working on. Mm-hmm. And they've talked about how state lawmakers have been paying down the debt in Mississippi, and it's making a big difference as well.
Yeah, it's freeing up some money in the general fund to necessary to offset some of these increased spending measures they have going on right now. As you know, the teacher pay raise is one, Medicaid. We just had Senator Daniel Sparks on yesterday. We went through the laundry list of all of those particular spending objects. So, yeah, it's good news in that we're retiring debt, and thus our spending, our outlays for principal and interest are declining steadily, but we're also increasing it elsewhere. But so at least it's not having as significant an effect, the spending increases, on the bottom line budget. But, yeah, good stuff.
I know you're a numbers guy, Gerard, and you're in the books looking up that stuff. Yeah. I listen to your show sometimes, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm glad I'm not having to do that math. We were talking earlier about the liquor warehouse, the ABC warehouse, still shut down largely. I mean, it's operating at a very slow pace and decreased level of volume. What the heck's going on there? What do you know about that? Well, I just heard you go into this in detail. We've got 3 Gulf Coast package stores that are so upset they're suing the third party that's supposed to be making this happen. One thing I really didn't hear you mention when you were talking about this story, now that they filed a lawsuit, is that this is all over a broken conveyor belt system at the warehouse, which didn't get tested. And the backlog started when they started having to load the liquor manually. And they did hire extra staff at the ABC warehouse, but it's just taking longer because instead of the conveyor belt system, which is inoperable right now, they're having to load these trucks manually. So that's
right.
really the basic problem
and there's issues with some new software as well, but the combination of those happening at the same time is really wreaking havoc on that whole distribution function, operating on a very much a limited basis, almost a shell of itself, if you will, no doubt causing problems.
And they said that hopefully things would improve in the month of March, but they really haven't given us any updated figures on the backlog. I think it was 900,000 cases in February or something like that, so it's huge. And I like a cold beer on the weekend, so maybe a margarita. So I don't want to hear this.
I hear you.
Yeah.
All right, so the this bill that would have exempted NIL income from state income tax. Man, that ignited quite the firestorm. It passed the House, it got down to the Senate, and the Senate promptly killed it, disposed of it. And that's exactly what Senator Daniel Sparks told me on the show a couple of weeks ago, and that's what happened. What do you think? What's the latest?
Well, this legislation was aimed at making Mississippi universities more competitive in college athletics. So what it would have done is exempt NIL deals for student athletes from state income taxes. They've struck it down. Tuesday, interestingly, the Senate Finance Committee elected not to take up House Bill 4014, which allowed college athletes to strike deals without having to worry about paying state income taxes. And Governor Tate Reeves had this to say.
Our college athletics is important to us. Being competitive and ensuring that we don't have laws on the books that make it that our universities are at a competitive disadvantage. I certainly understand the thought process there. My view is we shouldn't have any income tax on anybody. That would make us more competitive with Texas and Tennessee and Florida, all of which have no income tax.
Yeah, and he just named the states that have already done that on the NIL deals.
Well, no, the
income tax. It's coming.
Here's what I think is going to happen. So Tennessee, Florida, Texas already have no state income tax on any income, right? Arkansas just recently enacted, he talked about that, legislation that exempts NIL income. I think you're going to see Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, Oklahoma follow suit. Not sure about Missouri, a little different situation. Kentucky, I think you're going to see them follow suit. It could be a situation where in a couple of years the state of Mississippi is the only one that hasn't exempted NIL income.
And will that hurt recruiting time?
Hard to tell. I mean, that's so subjective, case by case. Really hard to tell. It just feels like that's maybe where it's going, and it's a tough one. And I know a lot of people get super upset about that, and I get it. It does feel a bit inequitable and unfair, but taxes in general just aren't fair. All right, Kelly, always good talking to you. Appreciate you joining us today. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for the invitation, guys. Have a great weekend.
You bet. You too. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From theSeabrook.com,
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Love is but a song we sing, fears we will die. You can make the mountains ring, or make the angels cry.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. That's the Youngbloods bumping us into this segment here. Feel like that's what we need these days. Get together. On the C Spire text line, someone out there is claiming that some people would have to travel over 400 miles to vote. That's when we were talking about the Democrats lying about what the SAVE Act would involve. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I haven't heard that, but I don't doubt anything that they would say about that common sense legislation. Now, don't forget, here in the state of Mississippi, we have kind of a bill that I would call sort of a microcosm of the SAVE Act, known as the SHIELD Act. I believe that legislation is still alive, the SHIELD Act, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll see what happens. Senator Jeremy England, I believe, was one of the ones involved in that. Senate Bill 2588, known as the SHIELD Act. And so we have this system at the federal level, the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements. Also, that system acronym to describe it is SAVE. Boy, it's super confusing. So we have the SAVE database and we have the SAVE Act. So the SAVE database is actually managed by the Department of Homeland Security. And it exists to assist federal, state, local governments in determining citizenship status using identifying information. So all voters in the state of Mississippi are entered into the Statewide Elections Management System, SEMS, the acronym to describe it. You've heard Secretary of State Michael Watson use that acronym in our discussions whenever we're talking to him on Election Day, typically. And so you register at the local level with your county circuit clerk, and then that information is entered in the statewide system that is managed by the Secretary of State. And so all voter registration applicants currently in the state are entered in that system and compared with information from the State Department of Public Safety regarding their status as U.S. citizens. But it's not all-encompassing. It doesn't have everybody in it. So under this legislation, a new applicants to vote, their registration information as they use to complete the proper documentation would also be cross-checked with a federal SAVE system to determine their citizenship status. Now, if it returns information indicating that, hey, this person may not be a citizen, the applicant is mailed a notification, and then within 30 days, under this proposed legislation, they simply come in and provide proof of citizenship. That could be a birth certificate, a passport, U.S. naturalization documents, and they're good to go. Simple as that. By the way, this proof of citizenship, these standards established by the Federal Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, those have been the standards in this country since 1986, that time period. And a legible photocopy of those documents would also suffice, would satisfy those requirements. Senator England said, if we ended up having, one person anywhere in the state of Mississippi that's not a citizen that voted in our elections, that's going to lead to distrust in our election system. Adding these extra levels of security and verification, I don't think they're burdens. I think they're just making sure our voter rolls are clean and that we do have U.S. citizens and only U.S. citizens voting in Mississippi. Common sense. So the main thing is when you register to vote, you're an applicant. You're applying for the privilege of voting for the first time. You got to prove you're a citizen. Bring your documents, as we just discussed. Once your name is in the database, And for all those that are currently registered to vote, that are contained in the SEMS database operated by the Secretary of State, this legislation would also require the Secretary of State on an annual basis to compare everyone in the system against the federal SAVE database to ensure that there are no non-citizens in the state's election management system. And again, if the system returns information about people who it finds to be non-citizens, the Secretary of State is then instructed to remove them from the voter rolls. It's that simple. And if there's an error committed there, then when they go to vote, they say, hey, wait, we don't have you on the voter rolls. You've been removed. You still, as you know, Rhino, we've discussed this a million times, you still can vote, sign an affidavit. Then that is then investigated post-election, and then your vote counts. And if you're called, hey, look, the reason is because, and you're going to get notified anyhow when you get removed, just go prove who you are. You're good to go. My guess is that that'll be a teeny tiny number of people at the end of the day. I just don't think it will be significant. This is not onerous. So this is kind of the state's version of what the federal government is attempting to do in the SAVE Act. You prove you're a citizen to register. If there's any change in your status that requires updating the voter rolls, such as you get married, such as you move, that then triggers that process again. You got to prove you're a citizen. Pretty straightforward. And everybody that's currently on the rolls, no action is required unless you get notified upon the Secretary of State's verifying your citizenship status with the federal SAVE database that you're not a citizen, and you say, wait, I am. You just go to your circuit clerk and say, look, I'm a citizen. Here are the documents to prove it. You're restored to the rolls. You're good to go. I just bet that the number of that happening, Rhino, I bet you could count on one hand in the state, honestly, that there's a mistake made, We removed you because the system says you're not a citizen, but you really are. I just bet you could count those incidents on one hand. Not that big a deal. So I applaud this legislation from Senator Jeremy England that would impose these straightforward verification measures. And that bill, by the way, is sitting in the House, returned for concurrence. That is as of 3/11. I don't know why the House is sitting on that, why they haven't signed off on that. But as you know, if it hangs around for next week, it goes to conference. Or if they don't concur, it dies. That's where we are. We're at that status in the legislative process. Bills have been swapped back and forth using the Rhino procession. If they got amended, they got to go back to the other side. And if the other side at that point either can concur, gets sent to the governor for signature, or they sit on it and it dies, or they invite conference. And if the other side says, we're down, we'll meet you in conference, then that's what they do. They get together on the big infamous conference weekend, which would be weekend after this one. Ostensibly at this point, that's what's scheduled. And they try to hammer out a report that then gets submitted back, and then they vote on it, essentially. I miss anything there? Is that okay?
I mean, the only detail I would add is that in conference, the House chooses 3, the Senate chooses 3.
Correct.
Those are the ones that meet.
You're right. It's not the entire. You're right. Thanks for that
Session.
distinction. That's right. Thank you. The conference literally is a small number of selected individuals from each side that come together to work through the differences, if you will, and hammer out a final report. This is what we came up with that we agreed to in conference. Okay, House, Senate, what do you think? Let's go vote.
And it's usually committee members from the committees the bill is sent to.
And makes sense because they're the ones who are also familiar with the content of that legislation as well. So, we've been talking a little bit about the budget, the U.S. budget. Did you know that Wednesday there was a bill House chair, Budget Committee House chair, was forecasting that this measure, largely symbolic, would fail, but it would have forced a balanced budget in the United States. Lawmakers on Wednesday rejected to compel the U.S. to maintain a balanced budget. That's nice, isn't it? No, that's for the little people. They balance budgets. That's what I feel like they're saying. 211 to 207, it failed. Wow. Coming right back.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Tim in Cleveland said the same thing you did with respect to what I kind of termed as the ruination of Europe. He said it's because European nations have allowed so many Muslims to infiltrate their population that they are now powerless to do anything against any Muslim nation. I just was kind of echoing the president's lambasting of our European allies today, referring to them as cowards, losers for not wanting to help out to get the dang Strait of Hormuz secure so we can get the flow of oil going again. And, and it may sound bigoted, but that's because often when the Muslims immigrate into a country, they don't assimilate. That's the problem. It'd be one thing if they said, okay, I want in, and I'm essentially detaching myself from the culture from whence I came. For the most part, it doesn't mean in private you can't still maintain whatever those practices are, but you need to become an American. You need to assimilate. You need to salute the flag, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and be patriotic, and do your duty. Contribute to society. And not, the big thing is, not try to pressure everybody else to adopt to your ways. No. Leave us the hell alone. And it doesn't matter who it is. I'm not just talking about Muslims. And I remember there was a time when it is true the Democrats like to point to it. Oh, this country was settled by immigrants. Yeah, but they came here to be Americans. Did they bring some of their innate culture with them? Yeah, but they first and foremost were Americans.
And historically, in America, if there was an uptick in immigration to the point where so many people were coming to America that they no longer had to assimilate, historically, America closed the door.
That's exactly right. You come in
until such a time that the immigrants that were here had time to assimilate.
You come in, you speak our language, you learn our traditions, our laws, our culture. You abide, you adhere, you respect, you fall in line. Simple as that. It's not what's happening in Europe, though. It's quite the opposite. They're trying to convert Europe to be them, their home countries of origin. I'm with you, Tim. It's ridiculous. Charles Matheson says, and what is the average voter turnout as a percentage of voting eligible population? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what we were talking about then, Tim, but it's low, and I know for a fact here in the state of Mississippi, a couple of weeks ago, we had a statewide election for a U.S. senator. We had turnout of 16%. That's horrible. We got to do better. And when you get a president on the ticket, no doubt turnout improves, but it's still, I think, less than 50% of the total registered voters. You must realize that you even have to provide a birth certificate to play Little League Baseball. I hear you on 662. I've talked about it before when I coached youth sports for many years. My wife was the keeper of the records, and she carried a dang pack around with her that had all the kids' birth certificates in it in case somebody asked and questioned. We weren't going to call it, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that in a situation. It's just common sense. Agree. Marshall and Terry, world peace, Miss America. If we could have world peace, yeah, that is what they say. What do you want more than anything of all? World peace. That's right. How much gasoline and diesel do we export? And I'm going to combine that with another question someone asked earlier that now has rolled across, and I don't see it. That is one of the more complicated things about the energy industry is where we kind of stand with respect to imports, exports. I think somebody said earlier that we were actually exporting and not importing. Here's what makes it confusing. A lot of times when you hear these energy talking heads talk about this, they're talking about, as you know, Rhino, oil plus gas, all petroleum products. If you look just at crude oil, we don't produce it as much as we consume. We're at about, I just checked the latest, we're at about 13.7 million barrels per day of crude oil produced, but we're now consuming 20 to 21 million barrels per day. So we don't produce enough in this country to satisfy our demand of strictly crude oil. But when you add gas into the equation, we produce way more natural gas than we consume. And so the net energy import-export is positive. We are a net exporter of fossil fuels, but we are an importer of crude oil. And our biggest partner in importing is actually Canada. It's about 50% of the crude oil that we import. We also have this chemical imbalance between the refineries in this country that were all built around the dirty, sour, high-sulfur oil. Coming right back after Fox News, SuperTalk News. Stay with us.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
So I was talking before we went to break about how I'm fine with people immigrating into this country as long as they obey our laws and they assimilate into our society. And someone said, well, what about Little Italy and Chinatown? Fair point.
Those were established in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, before the Immigration Act of 1924 that pretty much put a stop to most immigration.
I think the difference, though, to me, I agree. You're right about that. I think the difference is, I want you to think a second about...
Like, those were examples used for reasons why immigration should be limited.
Oh, right. That's exactly right. Exactly right. But think a minute about the U.S. Congress, the squad. Think about them, those people, for a minute. I mean, you've got people, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib. I mean, they've been, like, outspoken about their detest of America, this disdain for America, right? And seem to always be promoting and deferring to foreigners. It's like America's a bad place. Now, these are American citizens, but they do have backgrounds from other countries, and at least one of them, right, immigrated into this country, became naturalized. Ilhan Omar, I'm not sure about Presley and Tlaib. I don't know what their backgrounds are.
I don't think Presley's from any country.
Okay. So, and she, of course, represents Massachusetts. But you see the point I'm making there is that I happen to believe that they're not assimilating. They're constantly attacking.
Yeah, Presley was born in Ohio.
Okay. So they're constantly attacking this country, and they're sitting in the U.S. Congress. And they're denouncing this country and its policies. And again, always propping up, prioritizing, providing preferential treatment to illegals, and in some cases, other countries. I mean, to some extent, Ilhan Omar, who comes from Minnesota, she defended the money laundering back to Somalia.
She's given speeches in Somali where she stated her entire purpose is to support Somalia.
Yeah, exactly. And utilize her power and leverage sitting in the United States House and enriched herself as a result of that. That's different to me than a Little Italy or a Chinatown. I'm just making that distinction because in general, when you're in those areas, and I've been there, I've been in those areas of big cities that have a concentration of a certain people from a different nation. They're proud Americans, in my observation. My family, my great-grandfather came here from Italy. I've told this before, I'll tell it again. And my father growing up talks about everybody in the house spoke Italian. Spoke English as well, broken English because they came from Italy and you didn't have time to go learn English, but they did it on their own as best they could. And my father said, even as a young boy, he would speak Italian because that's what he heard. It's what kids do, right? And he said, they slap him upside the head. You're in America. You speak English. And consequently, my father, growing up around all these proud Italian Americans, never really mastered the Italian language. It's because they told him, you're in America, you speak English. That's what I'm talking about. Do you think Ilhan Omar would do that? Heck no. And the difference is she pokes you in the eye with that crap all the time. And I get it. It's a fair point that we had on the C Spire text line. But there is a clear distinction between those who, well, sure, it's part of their heritage, and they brought it with them, and they're still practicing it. But first and foremost, they're American citizens. You could look within our state. There are a number of fantastic Asian American Mississippians. I'm just using them as an example. There are other nationalities as well, but I happen to know a lot. These are fantastic American people. They're Americans first and foremost, and super proud of it, and contribute mightily to society.
It's not popular in the Democrat Party to be proud of America, though.
That's exactly right, and that's what I'm saying. So,
to the point where if you see an American flag, you associate it with republicanism.
That is absolutely true.
That is the level of disdain the Democrat Party holds for this country. And
isn't it goofy old Liz Warren that's mad about some tattoo that Pete Hegseth has? I saw that the other day. It's like some patriotic Christian tattoo or something. She's all mad. Am I right about this? She's all mad about this.
She's been mad about it.
It's unbelievable.
But she just endorsed a Democrat candidate that had a literal Nazi tattoo on his chest.
Saw that. Absolutely saw that.
Had the SS skull and crossbones on his chest.
And proud of her endorsement. That's not assimilating, and she's a damn U.S. Senator. Unbelievable. I get fired up about that. Sorry about that. Man, oh man. What else we got here? So, with respect to this, just to close this out, this oil and gas and fossil fuels issue, I have spent a fair amount of time researching all that. It's super complicated. And here's what I mean by that. The term, the phrase, energy independence, there's no clear-cut consensus definition of what that means. I think most people think it means we produce enough oil to meet our consumption demand. And it's not what it means. And there are a couple of definitions. One is all petroleum products. The other is all energy products and sources. So if the total amount of energy sources we produce in this country equals or exceeds the amount we consume total, regardless of what that particular type of energy is, be it gas or diesel or natural gas or solar or nuclear, just all the above. I probably left some out, but all the above, if those equal or we exceed on the supply to the demand, we're considered energy independent. You may have imbalances on one of those or the other, and that's exactly what the case is with oil. We don't produce enough oil. Do we have enough? Yes. We got enough underground. Somebody said on the C Spire text line, what about Anwar? That's absolutely true. It is thought to have decades of oil on it. But there's the matter of somebody's got to get it out of the ground. Then it's got to be refined. And so when you got those who produce oil and explore for oil and harvest it out of the ground and then send it on up the supply chain for further processing into usable fuels, remember there's an economic aspect of that in play. They go out and produce a whole lot more. That increases supply. That drives the price down. That has an effect on their bottom line. You drive it down too much, they literally start losing money. The Democrats never got that. But if you go back and look at the big oil companies in this country during the COVID era, when this place was shut down and the price was driven down, they were losing their shirts. And then Joe Biden started attacking him because once we kind of returned to some degree of normalcy, they started making money again. But they needed to make money for a few years to make up for the amount of losses that they incurred during that period. The only point I'm making is it's governed by demand and supply. So just because it's sitting there underground doesn't mean they necessarily want to go get it out and put it on the market. Then you flood the market, increase supply, and that drives the price down. And that's a problem as well for these companies. But you can't see a war coming like this where, gee, I wish we would have done that. We could have filled that vacuum of supply coming from the Middle East. But we've actually never produced enough oil to satisfy our demand. We've always lagged in that respect. Currently, we lag about 7 million barrels a day. And then we got the problem with the refineries, unfortunately, in this country that were all built around the most common grade of oil harvested in this country until fracking began. And that's the heavy, sour, high sulfur content grade. That's what our refineries are built around. But the fracking is pulling light sweet out of the ground. And we got to send it overseas where the refineries exist. Now, the good news is we saw an announcement a couple of weeks ago by a group that's building the first dang refinery that's been built here in like 40 years or something, right? That's great news, and I hope we see more of that. And I think that is because of the president relaxing the policies, the regulations around oil and gas exploration, thinking, okay, maybe we'll take a risk here, and we'll spend several $billions, by the way, on building a new refinery because we feel pretty good about the future and having sufficient crude oil and gas out of the ground to refine and produce into usable fuels. So that could help us rely even less on having to ship that product abroad and have it refined and processed and sent back to us to use. Coming right back with Deep Purple bumping us out of this segment.
Hello,
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Something else happening at the federal level is the United States Education Department is going to transfer defaulted student loans over to Treasury and let them pursue the deadbeats. $1.7 trillion, more than American credit card debt. 1.7. It's because there's no limit to the amount of money the federal government can produce. They're not limited. Imagine if your household were not limited. You go crazy. That's what our federal government has done with money. Fully now, 46 cents of every dollar spent borrowed. So Even though I know we send our delegation up to Washington to go up there and bring home all that money, just remember, 46 cents of every dollar they send our way is borrowed. Borrowed. That's why it's sitting at $39 trillion of debt with no end in sight. Absolutely no end in sight. Markets are selling off even further. We need a breakthrough to get the markets headed in the different direction, a breakthrough on the situation in Iran. So there was a question on the C Spire text line, a valid one that comes up. Why can't the liquor stores in the state of Mississippi buy liquor from a Louisiana distributor? Yeah, that's what this bill – first, they can't. It's against the law. They have to procure their product, their wine and spirits, from the ABC warehouse. That's just state law. There is a bill, Representative Zuber, has that I think still awaiting final passage that would, for 2 years, allow them, we had him on the program a couple of weeks ago, allow retailers, liquor stores, restaurants, lounges, etc., anyone with a liquor license, a license to sell liquor at a retail level, could circumvent, bypass the current ABC warehouse and buy elsewhere, directly from the manufacturer, distributors, and I'm not sure if the model of Louisiana, I haven't looked that one up. I've looked up several states. I hadn't thought to look up Louisiana, what their model is, Rhino, that in terms of the supply chain and the flow of alcoholic beverage products from the manufacturer to distributors to the retail locations in Louisiana, which, of course, includes a bunch of grocery stores as well. So that's what this bill would do. Temporarily, for 2 years, allow the outlets in the state of Mississippi, retail outlets, both packaged liquor stores, restaurants, lounges, etc., they would allow them to purchase out of state, not be compelled, mandated by law to purchase from ABC. But the problem, of course, is the money generated by the ABC warehouse. $57 million a year. Doesn't sound like a lot in a $7.1 trillion, pardon me, I'm so used to the federal government, $7.1 billion budget. But when we're adding on all these other expenses in our budget, we talked to Senator Sparks about that yesterday, PERS, teacher pay raise, Medicaid, corrections, SNAP error rate, sure I missed a few, just normal, natural cost of doing business in the state government. That's on a collision course with a decline in revenue that might cause us a problem. I personally think it will. Will from the perspective of we're spending more than we got. Now, the good news is, as Kelly Bennett talked about earlier, shared with us, the governor, of course, making this announcement earlier in the week, that our bond rating has been increased. And to a great extent, that's because we have been taking care of our debt in a responsible fashion. And so as we do retire debt, it is true that the cash used out of our general fund to service that debt, it also decreases, and that means that it serves as a bit of an offset for the additional spending being enacted. But again, if this bill goes through, they being the liquor retail outlets, could bypass ABC. But it does put the state in a bit of a pickle in that you're losing out on that revenue that's coming into the general fund. On the C Spire text line, you can probably count on one hand the times illegal voted. I don't know if that means in the state or nationwide. It is true that lots of research has been done on that, but it doesn't matter that maybe to this point that really hasn't been a significant number, be it within the state or even outside of the state. What matters to me is that we just get common sense legislation in place to prevent such from happening. Just check the box, call it a day, whether it truly is happening or not. May not be, and I don't think it is in the state of Mississippi, necessarily a huge problem, but it doesn't matter. Get this done, and we don't have to worry about it. Just common sense. I really don't have any issues with that bill, but how many illegals trying to not be found by government do we think are registering to vote? And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I don't think that they necessarily are as well. I don't think they're just going into the circuit clerk's office to register to vote, because I do think they're concerned about being discovered and the consequences there. Heck, there a lot of employers around the state have reported problems with legals that work for them, that are here under a work visa or have legal immigration status but aren't citizens. They're worried about that. The president, by the way, a couple of days ago announced that they're going to sort of restructure ICE's operations around that to make sure that we're really just focusing on those who need to be shifted out of the country, and that we're doing that in a little bit more methodical fashion. He too has indicated some concerns about ICE's operations since he's been in office. I caught a couple of pieces about that and quotes from him on that. Let's see. Van in Ocean Springs had an interesting message for us. Said there's an allusion to something like getting on the other side of this and maybe something good will happen. Do you think there's an actual plan? At the very least, the administration has done a very poor job of articulating any sort of plan, short or long term. My best guess is that they did not anticipate this level of disruption to the oil trade and the level of resistance Iran is capable of. I do always appreciate you guys tying this back to the national debt, which is something that affects every one of us. That's Van in Ocean Springs. All good points, Van. I tend to agree. I think one of the challenges, though, is, how much can the president and the secretary and the joint chiefs, those generals responsible for the operation, how much do we want them to tell us? I think one thing that is probably true is that this has lingered on for longer than I think many thought. I think this is what got the markets rattled. They thought this would be in and out in a couple of weeks, and now we're closing out week 3, I believe. That would be tomorrow, correct? So we're looking at being in a month, and that's got some concerns. Economists are concerned.
But if you remember, in the first week of the actions, the conversation was an 8-week timetable that they were ahead of schedule on.
That's right. That's absolutely right. But as you get into it, it doesn't matter. People get impatient. You know that. Do you think there's an actual plan? Well, I think the plan is to, again, completely alleviate their nuclear capability and their nuclear ambitions. I don't know that this is necessarily part of the military objective, and I don't think it is, but the president has said, hey, go take your country over. The regime has been decimated. I think we'd like to see a change in leadership in the country. And you probably saw that, consistent with their evil, cult-like, barbaric practices, what they do, they executed a soccer player or a 19-year-old, I think, for all to see, right? Because that's all they have. That's all they understand. I think that was to send the message, we're still in charge, and don't think about stepping out of line.
They alleged that he stabbed a security officer during a riot.
Horse hockey. I think that's what that's all about. You talk about it all the time. It's saving face. These cult-like systems are all about that. That is a key tenet of communism, is it not? It's the image projected. That, dwarfs everything else. It's priority over everything else. So I agree with you, Van, in that I'm not sure or not whether or not they thought that we'd have this kind of oil disruption. My guess is the president didn't anticipate that. But, man, I think anytime you open up an attack like this, I
think it's silly to say that the U.S. military didn't think the Strait of Hormuz would be a problem.
Perhaps you're right.
Considering that's been in every single war game against Iran for the last 50 years, considering it was such a problem during the Iran-Iraq war that Saudi Arabia built the East-West pipeline in the 80s.
I agree, although I think they felt like they'd be able to stabilize it quicker than they have been. I think there's just more stuff about this we don't know, which is why they won't move. Coming right back.
From the Seabrook.com.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. By the way, on the C Spire text line, it was a 19-year-old wrestler. Apologize for that. I said it was a soccer player because I know it's a very popular sport in the country. But the point is, it was a 19-year-old citizen that was used to make an example, is really what it was. A sacrificial example. It's disgusting. So... lots of chatter back and forth. I'm checking out on social media on the break. I posted something this morning about what we've been talking about, the prospect of much higher oil, and they're the anti-Trump people that are going crazy over the whole situation, and of course there are people that go back at them. You just got Trump derangement syndrome. So we're not a very civil society. And especially on something as controversial as this. And all I did was share facts. And I just said, as I am now, I don't want to be doom and gloom and upset and mad and, you know, and kicking down doors and acting crazy about this. I want to pray and be optimistic and hopeful is what I want to do. Because I don't think I have much of a choice otherwise. Might we have to adjust our lifestyle on a short period of time, to deal with this? Sure. Am I concerned about the prospect of the longer-term implications on our economy, on the control of our government in Washington? Yeah, I'm concerned about that. Does that mean I don't trust the president? No, it's just stating the obvious. I mean, that's just the dynamics of the hand we've been dealt with here. And I'll say again, we don't know everything he knows about what was happening in Iran. Hell, for all I know, they could have been within, I mean, he's told us basically kind of where they were with respect to the production of these 11 nuclear warheads, right? But I guarantee you there's more to that we don't know about. I'm convinced of that. And that American people don't need to know. For strategic reasons, military reasons. We don't tell the world everything that's going on there. Even when we
used to.
Right.
We spent 20 years in the global war on terror doing just that.
Which was stupid.
Hey, news outlets, we're doing a surge.
That was dumb.
And then every single soldier in that surge was put in danger because the world knew the surge was coming.
100%. And so every time the president gets asked, what about troops on the ground? I'm not telling you one way or another. Now, you can't hide the fact that there's a big deployment going on right now. But you don't know what that means exactly. I don't know what the strategy is behind that. I'm not going to try to second guess and speculate what that might be. But at this point, in believing the president and the administration that they were awfully close to achieving something we can't let happen. He's been very clear about that, not only since he's been president, but even going back to interviews when he was just a private citizen. He talked, you remember that, Rhino, about Iran. We can't ever let them have a nuclear weapon. And that's nothing new. Bush said it as well. And even, hell, Obama went over and bombed places in the region because of the fear of them getting a little too powerful militarily and wreaking havoc and doing harm to us and other parts of the world that would affect us. So I think at this point the best thing we can do is hang in there and support certainly our military regardless, because they just go where civilians tell them. Don't forget that. no matter what. They deserve our utmost of support from a military technology and assets perspective in the American public and people themselves, in my view. So let's hope we get to there. Larry in Ma says, how many illegal no-excuse absentee mail-in ballots have been used nationwide? So keep this in mind, Larry. First, you got to register. So remember, what the SAVE Act does, this bill that's being considered in the state of Mississippi, it focuses on registration. You've got to prove you're a legal citizen to register to vote. So that once you show up at the ballot box with your ID, and that checks with who is on the voter rolls, where you've already been vetted as an American citizen, you're good to go. The big problem with voter and election fraud, by far, in my view, comes into play in the states, 8 or 10, that have virtually all mail-in voting. That's where it's a problem. But honestly, in those states, it don't matter how they vote and what the voting methodology is. They're going blue. It's California, it's Oregon, it's Washington, it's Hawaii. Where there's some questions, or Nevada. Utah, on the other hand, is solidly, reliably red, and it has all-mail elections. Nevada is kind of a purple state. So that's where it's a bigger problem. Now, automatic voter registration is another issue, and that's just anytime you're doing business with a government, there are about half the states in this country automatically register you to vote. I maintain that in those states that allow illegals to obtain licenses, which is crazy, honestly, that, yeah, they could end up on the voter rolls as a result of that. But they're supposed to check to make sure that they're citizens before that transfer, that additional activity occurs. Supposed to. I'm not saying they are. But that could be a problem. We don't do that in the state of Mississippi. To my knowledge, it's not automatic. Right, Rhino? It's not automatic when you go, say, get your driver's license. But, again, vetting is supposed to occur before they just automatically insert you in the voter database. I maintain there are a lot of people that get registered, don't even know it. You agree? Don't even know. No doubt about it. Heck, by far the biggest problem we got is nobody goes out to vote. That's a much larger problem in my view. But where the risk comes in with this all mail-in voting is they just send ballots out to the address stored in the system to everybody that's on the rolls. That's the risk in that there are unscrupulous operators that go out and find all those ballots, fill them out illegally, and then send them in, and they get counted. That's where it's a problem.
And it's a bigger problem due to lower voter turnout.
Exactly right.
Because those illegally filled out ballots make up a larger percentage of the total vote.
And they're for Democrats because they've got operators that know where those things are going. They figured out somehow, and they'll go grab them, and they fill them out.
I don't think they figured it out. I think they set it up.
Well, you could be right about that as well. I agree. You could be right.
You don't accidentally have a UPS box full of ballots show up to a one-bedroom apartment without something nefarious having gone on.
100%. And once again, systems failure. Because the system should know, geez, we got 50 people signed up at the same one-bedroom apartment. That ain't right. We need to check it out. Systems. Once again, all electronic systems.
All throughout the federal government.
100% right.
I mean, you got CBS News now finally doing what Nick Shirley's been doing for months. They've gone into California. They went into one building and found like 75% of the tenants were likely guilty of defrauding the federal government.
That's 100% right. That again, I've said it before, these dysfunctional, malfunctioning, weak systems, electronic systems that run every bit of this are at the heart of all this misspending. No question about it. And if there were a concerted effort to address all those terrible systems and correct all that, we could, I think, address a lot of the fraudulent spending, the improper spending, no doubt about it. And I'm encouraging everybody at the federal and the state level to take action and address that problem and modernize these systems and incorporate all the various controls and use all the latest technology available to make sure things like you just described don't happen. Because we do have technology that could do that. On the C Spire text line, Steve Hilton, the Republican, he's a Fox News personality, is leading in the California's governor's race. I've been keeping up with that. I have seen
Depending on the polls you look at, there are 2 Republicans leading.
Man, and that, I tell you, the San Francisco Chronicle and the L.A. Times having to publish that. It's killing them to have to publish those polls. It would be.
If it was 2 Republicans that got the top 2 vote totals, there'd be 2 Republicans running for governor.
That's exactly right, because it's open primary, right? Yeah. So, incredible, no doubt about it. And you know who's on the ballot there, running for governor? That goofy-ass Eric Swalwell, pardon my French. I get a little fired up about that guy. That guy's despicable, man. Running for governor. Unbelievable. Final segment on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Hey, this is Bob, and if
you know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I'm in a hurry to get things done. Oh, I rushing till life's no fun. All I really gotta do is live and die, but I'm in a hurry and don't know why.
Welcome back, everyone. Alabama bumping us into the final segment of the week here on Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Market's still selling off today, but like I said, I'm remaining optimistic that we're going to get this thing to a swift conclusion, and our best days are ahead. I'm just convinced of that. Always going to remain optimistic in that respect. And
well, I gave you the cynical answer on why Europe hasn't responded to calls by Trump to help out with the Strait of Hormuz. To end things out on the week, I'll give you the more positive viewpoint of why they might have been waiting to offer any support.
Please
because
do.
You remember yesterday they put out the statement with France and Britain and Germany and Italy and Japan all saying they were going to send support, send military assets to the Strait to help out. The more positive take on that is that Europe, since the 80s-ish, depending on the country, have been very hesitant to enter into any military conflict without getting swept up in, like there was a bit of a groundswell after 9/11, obviously, but outside of that, Europe has been hesitant to assist America in anything militarily.
Yeah.
Until America shows that they're kicking tail and winning the fight, and then Europe likes to pick the winner. That's about the most positive spin I could put on Europe's decision, because it does look like they are sending assets to the region.
Yeah.
I sent you the
screenshot
from the operational security problem that France is having with their aircraft carrier, the Charles de Gaulle, because apparently one of the officers connected their smartwatch to log their jog on the deck. And now, for all the world to see, there's a little line in the middle of the ocean denoting where the Charles de Gaulle was because he was uploading that GPS data to log his jog.
Unbelievable. You did, and I see that, and it's fascinating. So, I think you may be right, but I still don't think that overcomes the president's description of them as cowards. Still think they are. You're shaking your head. You agree with that. It shouldn't even take...
Because if you have to wait until you know which side's going to win and then jump on the winning side,
100%.
That is pretty cowardly.
It shouldn't even take coaxing, honestly, by the president. And so he gets upset, and then he scolds them. I'm with him. It's ridiculous.
If your buddy gets in a fist fight and you're waiting until he gets the guy on the ground to jump in, yeah, that makes you a bad player.
100%. So, on the C Spire text line, talking about this problem with the ABC warehouse, they won't let liquor procurement bill through if they let retailers buy from outside. Hell will break loose when they have to go back. I actually disagree with that. I know you may think that, and that's because of the cost model. Their costs are going to go up if they have to buy and they circumvent ABC. That is going to be more expensive. No doubt about that. And then there's the issue of what does the state do about that revenue? And I was really unclear a bit, Rhino, when Representative Zuber was on with us a couple of weeks, because I asked him, well, is the intention for whomever supplies from out of state, supplies alcohol into the state, would have to establish tax nexus with the state of Mississippi, thus they would levy the same taxes the ABC warehouse does? So the state is made whole and continues that revenue stream? He indicated yes, but he seemed less than certain about that, I guess, when he said it. It's the way I would put it. So I'm not really convinced. On the C Spire text line, Obama also gave them billions in cash. He did, and he literally thought that would cause them to play nice. Stupid. On the C Spire text line, if the nut jobs don't believe Iran won't use weapons of mass destruction, they aren't thinking straight. I agree. Totally agree. And let's see, has there anything been said on the C Spire text line? If a liquor store buys elsewhere, they're going to be paying retail. Yeah, and the other state's sales tax. That combined with any surcharge Mississippi charges, retail prices will skyrocket for consumers. Exactly right, what we were just saying. So I'm not sure. I hope that thing gets resolved fast, though. And it was Larry and Mize. Yeah, he said, I think you're wrong about California. There are a lot of conservatives in California. I actually agree with you, Larry, and have spent a lot of time there, and folks are a little surprised to find out. I cite this statistic. You've heard me use it before, Rhino. There are more registered Republicans. By the way, in California, they register by party, Democrat, Republican, or Independent. Those are the three choices when you register. There are more registered Republicans in California than people in Mississippi. I agree with you, Larry, and I've spent a lot of time in what's called the Inland Empire. That's Orange County, where Speaker McCarthy was from, Darrell Issa. There are a lot of great Republicans. I agree. All I'm saying is that the number of registered Democrats to the number of registered Republicans is almost a 2-to-1. And even if there's some illegals sprinkled in there, it's not enough to overcome, let's say, a presidential election, which is based on the total number of votes cast, and they award all the electoral votes. By the way, there's 7 million independents in California. That's 30% of the registered voters. There are only 25% of the registered voters who are Republicans. Democrats, Independent, Republican. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.